pandemic first hit, me and my wife both were laid off from our jobs. So stress started to kick in immediately. When the first ban ended, they were calling. They started calling and harassing like, hey, when you guys gonna pay your rent? If you can't pay your rent, we need a move out date immediately. Then the stress really started getting crazy.
I'm Andrea Coleman. I'm an attorney with Atlanta Legal Aid. I work with the DeKalb County Rental Assistance Program. And I have the honor of working side by side with tenants and landlords to help them reach a resolution in eviction cases and help people stay in their homes.
I contacted DeKalb County and their rental assistance program to find out what could be done. Was there any assistance, and what did I have to do to get that assistance? And then eventually they linked me to Legal Aid, who reached out to me, and then from there we moved forward, and Legal Aid did everything they could to help me get the rental assistance I needed.
Like so many people during this time, he fell behind in rent because he lost his job due to COVID-19. And so he had to, like so many others, make the tough decisions of which bills to pay.
The rental assistance was going to cover all of my back rent, but with all the penalties and all of that, that left a $2,335 balance. So the leasing company would not take anything from the rental assistance people unless I paid the $2,335 first.
If his case hadn't been sent to Legal Aid, I don't believe Mr. Blocker would have been able to reach an agreement with the landlord. I don't think that another office that this case would have been referred to would have stuck with it for 2 months.
Andrea Coleman was my legal aid attorney who was assigned to me with my case with the whole rental assistance. And she was just great about everything. Ms. Coleman reached out to me every time I emailed her. She emailed me back. She kept me informed with every step of the process. I felt like she was my angel in disguise, like God had sent her to help me and my family get through this whole burden of the pandemic and losing my job and my rent occurring on top of late fees and not being able to find a job right away and just not knowing what was going to happen. And Ms. Coleman was my angel in disguise.
Because Legal Aid helped with Mr. Blocker's TLAC application, he and his landlord were able to reach a consent agreement, and the eviction was dismissed, and they were able to stay in their home.
Well, since the eviction has got dismissed, I've been able to get another vehicle, and I've been able to get back to making some money. So I'm making some money now. Actually, the assistance that they gave me, they actually paid my back rent, and they paid my rent for September, October, and November, and there was something left over that'll pay December's rent. So it's given me a cushion, and it has allowed me to be able to ease the stress and plan going forward while being able to make some money again now.
When you donate to Legal Aid, you allow Legal Aid to help families avoid homelessness and assist families like Mr. Blocker.
Hello, I'm Deborah Enox Ross, President of the American Bar Association. Welcome to the ABA Day Online, our grassroots lobbying event, where we will urge federal lawmakers to support the Legal Services Corporation. The Legal Services Corporation, known as LSC, is a nonprofit organization established by Congress to fund civil legal aid programs for low-income Americans. LSC is the single largest provider of civil legal aid in the United States, serving millions of individuals and families across the country each year. Equal justice under law is a guarantee for all individuals, regardless of income. Unfortunately, the demand for legal services far outpaces the resources available. This is why the Legal Services Corporation is so critical. Without LSC, countless Americans would not be able to get the legal help they need to protect their rights and obtain justice. We are here for ABA Day to ask members of Congress to support the Legal Services Corporation and ensure it receives the funding it needs to do its essential work. We are emphasizing our nation's responsibility through our elected representatives to ensure that all Americans have access to the legal system. In our system of laws, access to justice is a right for all. Those of you who have a newly elected representative or senator have a special opportunity to introduce them, perhaps for the first time, to the urgent need for robust funding for the Legal Services Corporation. I cannot stress enough the impact you make when you connect with your members of Congress to amplify our voice for justice. Thank you for taking the time to join us on ABA Day to advocate for issues that are important to the legal profession.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania's 5th Congressional District, and I'm so glad to welcome you to the American Bar Association's annual Fly-In event. As a former Legal Services Board member and now co-chair of the Bipartisan Access to Legal Aid Caucus, I'm so grateful for the advocacy that you and your colleagues are doing on behalf of legal services. And I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come to the Hill and speak to my colleagues about the importance of legal aid, not just for the individual client, but for our communities and to the actual functioning of a civil society. As members of the ABA and lawyers in your own communities, your influence in Congress cannot be overstated. Your convening here to speak with your representatives brings a gravitas to the issue that's difficult to ignore, and you have a compelling story to tell. You all know how important the work of legal services is and how grossly underfunded. You know how access to justice is not a reality in this country, with funding for LSC remaining stagnant for decades. But many of my colleagues don't know that, and you can help draw their attention to it. Legal aid benefits constituents in every member's district, so please try to draw those local connections when you meet with them or their staffs, whether it's to seniors or veterans or families who could be illegally evicted. If any offices seem receptive, please tell them about the training module that my office put together to help constituent services staff collaborate with local legal services in order to drive better outcomes for more constituents. I'm proud to be leading the letter to appropriators this year to call for increased funding for the Legal Services Corporation, and your work on the Hill will be a big help. Please let me know how I can be helpful or if I can follow up with anyone that you meet with, and I look forward to seeing you around the Hill. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to ABA Day. You've already heard some really great information from ABA President Deborah Enoch Ross, from Congresswoman Scanlon, from two of our LSC champions, one who gives advice and one who took the advice. My goal now as the Director of the Government Affairs Office is to help remind you of what our asks are on Capitol Hill. With that in mind, we have 3 asks. Let's start with that. First, ask your member of Congress to support robust funding for the Legal Services Corporation. LSC does a great job providing grants to civil legal aid offices across the nation. But even with those grants, they have to turn away half the people that come to ask for help. We appreciate that Congress gave them $560 million last year, a $71 million increase. It's not enough. We appreciate that we recognize that Congress needs to make some tough fiscal decisions. But your members of Congress need to understand that their constituents are hurting. They need help, especially in the face of rising inflation in the wake of the global pandemic. And legal aid offices across the country rely on the federal funding they receive to provide as much help as they can to low-income Americans. Please urge your members to provide as much robust funding for LSC as possible in order to make access to justice for their constituents a better prospect. Second ask your members of Congress if they will sign on to the Dear Colleague letter that's being circulated on the Hill now. What chamber they're on depends on what letter to sign. There are 2 letters. On the Senate side, there are 4 bipartisan senators who are signing a letter. Senator Cornyn, Sullivan, Cardin, and Murphy. On the House side, there's a letter that has 6 representatives already on it, and those are Representative Fitzpatrick, Armstrong, Graves, Cohen, Scanlon, and Dingell. Please ask your member to add their name to that list so they indicate their support. Another way they can indicate their support is through our third list. Please, if they're on the House side, ask them to join the House Access to Legal Aid Caucus. By joining that caucus, they're showing their willingness and their support for being kept in the loop, for wanting to know what's happening, and for being part of the support for LSC. Those are the 3 asks. Now some final tips. As you're going into member offices, remember to offer yourself as a resource. Follow through on that offer. If they need help or they have questions and you can't help, tell us in the Government Affairs Office. We can help. Keep your talking points and your messages simple, short, and focused. You may walk in there thinking you have a half-hour meeting, and then you get 10 minutes. You don't want to waste that time. And last, join our ABA Day conversations online. Add hashtag ABA Day to any of your social media. Post photos, whether you are visiting your members on the Hill, in your home districts, or online. Put photos out there. Tag your members. And last, bolster the collective advocacy efforts of the legal profession by asking and continuing to urge more increased funding for Legal Services Corporation and more access to justice, people who need that help. Thank you, have fun, and we really appreciate your support.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for ABA Day 2023. My name is Eric Story, and as the Director of Grassroots and Digital Advocacy for the American Bar Association, I'm here to talk to you about how you can use our tools to amplify your advocacy efforts and support the meetings currently going on across Capitol Hill. So, why are we here today? Well, right now there are legal professionals from across the country conducting hundreds of meetings across Capitol Hill, all advocating for legal aid. And we want to support their efforts as much as possible. And when asked, congressional offices said the third best way to move the needle on an issue is constituent emails, behind only a face-to-face meeting with a constituent and a meeting with an association leader. So I want to draw your attention to our website at ambar.org/ABA Day. On this website, you'll find a wealth of resources to help you with your online advocacy, as well as any in-district meetings you may have with your members of Congress. This includes talking points, fact sheets, infographics, and other materials you can use. But what I want to focus on today is our congressional messaging portal, which you can access directly from the homepage of our website. This portal allows you to easily send messages to your members of Congress advocating for the Legal Services Corporation and introducing yourself as a resource. Now, you may be wondering why you should use our messaging portal instead of just sending an email to your member of Congress directly. The answer is simple. Our messaging portal is designed to get your message directly through congressional firewalls, which can often delay or even block messages from unknown emails. But we have a contract with Capitol Hill that allows all messages sent through our portal to get straight to our congressional offices. Using our messaging portal is easy. Simply visit ambar.org/ABA Day and scroll down until you see the Act Now button. Once you click that, you'll be taken to our congressional messaging portal, where you just need to decide which message you'd like to advocate on first. For purposes of this video, I'll go ahead and choose to support robust funding for the Legal Services Corporation. Now, all we have to do is enter in our first name, our last name, and our home address. And we want to make sure and use our home address here so it picks up the right U.S. representative. And then, of course, whatever email we'd like it to come from. Then, we are presented with 3 emails, one for each U.S. Senator and one for our U.S. representative. When crafting your messages, be sure to personalize it as much as possible. Explain why the Legal Services Corporation is important to you, your community, and your state. Share your personal stories and experiences. And most importantly, urge your member of Congress to support LSC and ensure that it receives the funding it needs to continue its critical work. As soon as your letters are ready to go, simply hit Submit Selected Letters. And just like that, your emails are sent directly to your congressional representatives. And once you've sent your letters, check on some of the rest of the resources we have on the ABA Day Toolkit. You can take your advocacy to the public square, for instance, by scrolling down to our social media center. Here you'll find sample suggested posts, as well as images you can use to copy and paste into your own messages. Of course, you can also use the same tool as before and send tweets with the handles of your members of Congress already put in there. Simply click on that option and you'll see 3 options for each of your members of Congress. It's just that easy. So I encourage you to take advantage of our digital tools today and make your voices heard on Capitol Hill. Together, we can ensure that our elected officials understand the critical importance of the Legal Services Corporation and the impact it has on the lives of millions of Americans. Thank you, and best of luck in your congressional interactions.
Hey everyone, Senator Tim Kaine here. I'm really glad to join you for your ABA Lobby Day. I wished we were doing it in person, but we'll do it virtually this year, and I'll see you in person next year. I want to talk to you about support for the Legal Services Corporation budget. I'm a Legal Services Corporation supporter because I'm an LSC family. My wife, Ann, as many of you know, worked for many years for Legal Services Corporation at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society and has continued to do work to support LSC programs during her entire career. I've been proud to join her in that. And now I have a second generation. My daughter-in-law, Carly, is an attorney with the Legal Services Corporation. So I understand in a very powerful way, both because of my family connections, but also because of my long work as a civil rights lawyer and public official in Virginia. I understand in a very clear way how important LSC is. You can be sure that in your effort to obtain robust funding, I will be an advocate and champion, particularly after 2 very difficult years of COVID. The challenges that families have, everything from sickness to job loss to businesses closed, and other needs that they have dramatically skyrocketed. Many, many more people need the support of civil legal services for low-income people, and so the LSC's mission has only gotten more important.
Greetings, lawyers, and thanks for coming to DC for your fly-in. I'm Kelly Armstrong, and I'm the co-chair of the Legal Aid Caucus. And I just think what a fantastic program. I mean, a Legal Service Corporation established in 1974. You hand out money to 132 independent nonprofits and serving 890 communities. And as the cost of litigation goes up and people end up more and more in these types of situations, I just can't imagine a program that we need to continue funding and servicing. So thank you all for being here. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to my office, and I hope you have a good trip to the Hill.
There's nothing more empowering than being involved in the political process for you as an individual, for you as a professional, for your family.
Engaging in civics is not just adjacent to the practice of law, but it's part of the practice of law, and it's part of who we are as individuals.
It's important because the political process is fundamentally concerned about what? Making law. And lawyers are trained to advocate, to interpret, to legislate, to push for laws that impact our communities on a state, local, and national level.
We as attorneys every day argue for and defend and advocate for our clients and those that we represent. Being involved in the government is a way for us to advocate for ourselves and our profession.
You need to be part of the solution. If you don't like what's happening, if you don't like legislation that's being enacted, if you don't like things that are coming up before Congress, do something about it.
Pick up the phone and make a few phone calls to folks that you see being involved. Ask them about their experience and ask them where they started.
You must be an advocate for things that you believe in that impact your community, that impact our profession. And we are trained, and we are lucky to be trained in such a way that we have the capacity to use our words through voice and through the written page to advocate on behalf of those who often cannot speak for themselves.
Figure out where your passion area is and start there. Small steps really make the big difference to making larger pieces of change.
Hey everyone, Brian Fitzpatrick here, representing Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. And I want to thank the American Bar Association for inviting me to speak about the importance of congressional funding of the Legal Services Corporation. Our investment in civil legal aid is one of the most effective ways to help all Americans, particularly our veterans and our seniors, to navigate the justice system. And too many of our veterans and seniors receive inadequate legal help, or in some cases, no professional assistance at all. And LSC funding combats that gap in services. Our veterans and our seniors should not have to fight for access to the justice system. It's a right that they've earned, and it's a responsibility that all of us have to them. Every American is deserving of our great nation's promise of equal justice under the law. And in that spirit, I'm proud to join my bipartisan colleagues to support robust congressional funding for LSC, especially in my role as a co-chair of the Access to Legal Aid Caucus in the House of Representatives. So I want to thank you again for having me. I look forward to our continued partnership on the 118th Congress on this issue and many others. God bless.